2020 is coming.
It's coming.
It's like a science fiction movie. 2020.
Yeah, it'll be here by the time people are watching this.
Wow.
So look at that.
It's
Time
2020.
flew just like that. It's
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, folks. Oh, wait, that was off. Let's do that again. One, two, three. Awesome. Hey, folks, I am here with Warren P. Sonoda. And I always wondered, actually, what the P stands for.
Pretentious.
Oh, definitely not.
Precise.
Yes.
It is Paul.
It is Paul. Okay.
Warren Paul Sonoda. And when I was younger and when I got in trouble, I would hear Warren Paul all the time.
Got it. So now you just
yeah, I go WPS since I was a kid, really, just my initials, and then there's actually another Warren Sonoda. Seriously, in
filmmaking?
Not in filmmaking. He's a chef in Washington State, I believe, which is weird because like I know Sonoda is not it's not like Smith in Japan, but it's it's a name.
Yeah.
But Warren is a very specific sort of Western name.
Very true.
Yeah, so I drop the P whenever
Did you
I can.
ever think about doing a film with the other Warren Sonoda?
I have to find him.
Do a food film.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
At least eat at his restaurant.
Yeah,
if
something.
he has a restaurant. So
right. Did you know that I speak Japanese a little bit? I studied Japanese in university.
You speak far more than I do then.
Already? And you don't even know how much
I know 5 bad words.
Oh, those are the things they didn't teach us in school.
That's right. Those are the things that I don't do for money, is speak Japanese. But did you live in Japan?
I did not live in Japan, but I went over there. I won a speech contest, Canadian-wide speech contest. Got to go to Japan.
What?
Nothing. That, mind you, that was 20 years ago, and
right.
My memory of all that I learned is squishy this.
Well, when we go over and premiere Things to Do for Money over there, come with us and you can be our Canadian translator.
Semi-translator.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
Limited vocabulary translator.
Yes, and sushi taster.
Awesome, will do. I will do that for no money, just because we love you.
Right. Things we do for no money is what the film actually
it's what
should
the
be
Canadian
called.
Film industry
yes, it's the independent film
called.
mantra, for sure.
Right. Well, when we decided we wanted to do a series of interviews to talk to people in the industry about their careers and how they got to where they are.
You called the first 20 people, they all said no, they're busy. And then you... somewhere down.
No, Warren, you were top of our list.
Wow.
The one and only, unanimously from the team.
That actually means a lot because First Weekends Club, and I try to say this from the mountaintops every time. You guys are promoting stuff, and we're out on social media talking about films that are coming out. It's one of the most important organizations out there in this country, and I don't think of I can't think of a filmmaker that can't open their film without your support. It's really a grassroots love, passion sort of project from all your team, and it sort of transcends to the filmmakers. So thank you. This is great.
Thanks, Warren. We appreciate the love, and that's pretty much why you are our first pick for this, because you share those values 100%. And you are the biggest film champion of Canadian film and Canadian filmmakers that we have ever seen.
I have really talented friends, and I love all of them. And thankfully, a lot of us get to make movies. And whenever we get to see each other's movies, it's kind of I was just at the Blood and Snow Film Festival yesterday seeing... So Aaron Barry made a movie called Magic, which is this great sort of sci-fi conspiracy theory. Paula Brancati's in it.
Okay.
Aaron was a cook at the Keg when I was a waiter at the Keg at Church Street. It was me, Jason Jones, and Aaron Barry. Once I started doing music videos, I'm like, I need someone to build a set for me this weekend. And Aaron's like, I can do stuff. And he showed up at Black Walk and became a art department set designer and then an art director, then an executive producer, and now he's making movies.
And Jason Jones, another person.
He's not doing bad, huh?
Uh-huh.
Him and Sam.
We know that name.
Power couple. Doing well.
But you were
Baby
with
makers.
Them way back?
Yeah, way back in high school, I knew Jason. And actually, the new movie Things I Do for Money, it's so funny. I was texting him because I was showing him some cuts of the film, and he was giving me feedback and encouragement. And I'm like, holy shit, Jason, this is the movie we were making back in high school. He did this thing called You Killed My Brother. Mm-hmm. No, Tough Guys. And then I did a sequel called You Killed My Brother Part 38 or something, and it's just like I can see thematically, whatever we were on about in high school is still stuff we're on about now. So it's interesting. It's nice.
Well, sometimes we age, but we don't really grow older.
Oh my God!
Right, and I kind of love that.
Let me tell you. Every year, right?
Maybe for another.
Every year, 2020 is coming.
It's coming.
It's like a science fiction movie. 2020.
Yeah, it'll be here by the time people are watching this.
Wow.
So look at that.
It's
Time
2020.
flew just like that.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, folks. Let's start way back in the beginning, where all good stories start.
Oh my goodness.
2004.
Okay.
You released your first feature.
Yes.
Called one of America's favorite sandwiches.
Ham and cheese.
Ham and cheese.
Ham and cheese, actually. This is so handy we're doing it here at my place.
Look at this. Yeah, we're just sitting in his living room here.
Yes.
There it is.
There it is.
In his Canadian film section.
2004. And talking about Jason Jones. So this is Jason Jones and Mike Beaver wrote the script to the film, and it was our first movie.
It was your first movie. How did you get that made?
Well, at the time, I was doing music videos with Aaron Barry. Was Aaron with us at that time? But Michael Harelade was the owner of Black Walk Productions.
Okay.
And for anybody that was around in the 90s doing music videos, there was Revolver, very shiny beer money sort of production company with all the great toys and everything. And then Black Walk Productions, which was the poor pirate cousin. And we went out and made I think it produced over 500 music videos in the run that it was on. I did 167 music videos. And at the time in 2003, when we decided to start doing narrative films, Michael got some telefilm money for Rob Stefanik to do Phil the Alien.
Right.
And at the exact same time, he let me go out, with his credit card and make ham and cheese. And it was kind of in reaction to, I was at the point where I was nearing the end of my run in music videos, and I just wanted to make a movie. I got into this to tell stories and make movies. And thankfully in music videos, I kind of niched into country really early because I loved the music.
Super interesting.
I know. Well, when I think of Canadian country music video kings, I think of this Japanese Canadian from Hamilton, Ontario.
There you go.
That's
who I think of, obviously.
I love country music, and
new country or old country?
Both.
Me
both
too.
New and old. Actually, Jen, my wife, is all about Dolly Parton right now.
Oh, who isn't? Everyone loves Dolly.
Johnny Reed, who I've done a bunch of music videos for, was just in Halifax. George Canyon just ran for a PM seat in Nova Scotia. So I was doing country videos, which were mostly narrative videos, right? They were all stories of some sort, even if it's about a truck that breaks down and you got to get to
That's
town.
80% of the country.
It's still a story that you get to tell. So and I love that, and I love the clients because the artists were so nice. They were genuine people, and I would consider them my friends, and it was wonderful. But I really wanted to make a movie. And Ham and Cheese came out of the frustration Jason and Mike were both having about not getting cast as lead actors, in anything.
Yeah.
So they wrote this movie about two horrible actors, and they gave it to me and said, "Do you want to do this?" And it was we ran it through a bunch of numbers and decided, yes, we can do this. And I think it was the second Tip film.
Wow. Okay.
Back in the day,
which is the Toronto
indie production,
fund
program for ACTRA, which allowed us to have, I think there's 30 or 40 speaking parts of the movie, and we had everybody from Dave Foley and Scott Thompson.
Oh wow!
Just an incredible cast that we couldn't have done it otherwise.
So 160 music videos later.
Yes.
Numerous episodes of TV.
Yeah, and it was really TV that kind of reinvented the course I was on, and it's allowed me to continue to make movies every once in a while, and it's been an exciting ride. I mean, I started aircraft pictures were great. They got me on Todd and Book of Pure Evil, What's Up Warthogs, but it was really when I started working with Trailer Park Boys, and we did SwearNet the movie, which was a blast. It was crazy. It's on Netflix if you want to check it out. And when they wanted to reboot the series for season 8 on Netflix, they were great, and they asked me to do the first 4 episodes. And
who else are you going to call?
And it was an eye-opening experience.
Can we just talk about SwearNet for a moment? Because as I was looking at the awards, we've received many awards. Let's talk about 2 awards here, very different ends of the spectrum. The one was the world record. You do hold the Guinness Book of World Records for the most cussing in a film.
Yes.
And there were, let me get it right here, 868 expletives.
We earned every single one of them. It's the only time I'm ever going to win something over Martin Scorsese, because he had Wolf of Wall Street was the reigning champ.
Okay.
And
how many? Do you
I think he was 600 and something, and he had 3 hours to cuss, to have all these expletives. We did it in a very svelte 10 minutes or something.
Amazing.
You know, our
That's
F word per minute was really high.
Right.
To reach that level. But yes, I am in the Guinness Book of World Records. I'm proudly in it. You know, it's not easy to put in
No, it's not.
868
I'm sure many of them were
in a movie. Yes.
I want to know how many of those were scripted versus ad-libbed.
You know, it was funny. There was a point where we were reading the script and working. I had about 6 weeks to prep the movie and work with Mike, JP, and Rob, kind of getting it ready to be filmed. And there was a point where it's like, do we have too many? Like, this is a lot. It was like, even reading it. So I don't know if we actually took some out of the script, but they all eventually made it back on screen.
Right.
I mean, the whole thing about SwearNet was about bucking the system and not being put into a lane and coloring outside the lines. So they definitely embraced the swearing in SwearNet.
The challenge.
Yes, the challenge of swearing.
On the other end of the spectrum, you have been honored with the 2014 Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal for your contribution to Canadian film.
Yes. It's not that fancy. I think they gave out 10,000 of these.
Okay.
But still, out of 36 million, that's not
still
bad.
Pretty fancy.
It was really a wonderful moment for my family, especially my mom and dad. There was a ceremony at the Royal. MP Eve Adams presented me the medal, and I mean it's nice to be recognized for the work you do, regardless of what your field you're in. But in the cultural industries, especially, there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think the more we get interested in advocating for the industry, and we see it, I see it with my friends who. When you first start out, you don't feel like you have skin in the game. You shouldn't really talk about it. But to get a little bit more interested, and then once you have a bit of a run, and you have a bit of a platform to stand on, to start talking about it.
Right.
And all you're really doing is advancing the discussion amongst your peer group, and then from there, the sort of the government and the industry and the stakeholder sort of world. Where you try to lend your voice in keeping the discussion going, because without sort of specific intervention, the Canadian cultural mandate will get drowned out by guess what, the elephant next to us, the
big guys,
the 300 million plus population of the United States.
Yeah. Now you've made it a priority to stay in Canada and to work in Canada. Why has that been so important to you when so many others have gone to the US and made really successful money-making careers out there?
Because I don't drive, and LA is I'm only joking halfway. I love Canada. I love I've been very fortunate in the work that I've done and the experiences I've had to visit many parts of Canada, coast to coast. My heart, there's a part of me that's always in the East Coast, whether it's Halifax and I love St. John's and St. John. My family's from BC. And even after the internment, when they left, there was still that sort of connection to Slocan and Greenwood and the interior BC places where the camps were, and they took me there, and I was able to see it, and sort of the pinnacle for me is Toronto, which I love. And having spent so much time out of Toronto, whether it's for work or being down in LA or whatever, always coming back here and being able to walk around, and not have to drive 20 minutes to get toothpaste. Right. That was the hardest thing about LA when I was there, was like any little thing. I was so handcuffed to drive somewhere that and there wasn't Uber when I was down there for a significant amount of time, that it was a place where I love to go. I love visiting. I love going down there. I love taking meetings and making deals and doing all that kind of stuff. But Canada for me is it. It's where I want to. It's where I want to stay. It's where I want to. Me and Jen have grown our roots here, and we're sprouting sort of the home that we've always wanted. So, got a dog.
You got a dog.
Got a dog.
He's right here.
He's right down there.
Yeah, we'll have him on camera later. Scruffy. Hey, sweetie.
But yeah, no. I've seen a lot of friends go to down the States, specifically LA, and they've had an amazing success down there. We're talking about Jason and Sam, living
Samantha
Bee and Jason Jones from The Daily Show, and now Samantha has what I think is the best late night talk show on television. Yeah. They live in New York. I've had so many great friends that have made substantive and successful runs down there, that anytime I do go down, I feel like I'm home anyway, because there's so many Canadians in LA. And but home for me is walking down Queen Street, right. going down to college, and so yeah.
So it's been 16 years, like we were talking about, and things have changed a lot in the industry. You were shooting on film, I imagine.
In music videos, yeah.
And probably not for your first couple of films?
Ham and Cheese was... So there was a movie called, I want to say Choke or something, that was shot on a P2 camera.
Okay. That
a bunch of us went to take a look at, and it was oh my god, tip of my tongue, filmmaker, still in Toronto, and I'm like, oh my god, this is the future of film, digital, 24 progressive video, and Ham and Cheese was actually shot on 25 PAL, converted to 24p, which took forever.
This is all Mandarin to me, what you're saying.
So right, basically, we shot on a UK video system or format, and then converted it into what we know as 24p video, which is film
Got it.
video. Brendan Stacy was the cinematographer, who's gone on to amazing acclaim. And we had no idea what we were doing. And the whole idea of like, oh my god, my entire film right now is on this little P2 card is terrifying. Because up until then I was shooting on 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter film, and but still cutting, not digitally but on tape. So we went from making beta SP and digital beta tapes and VHS tapes now to DCPs and cutting on Adobe and Avids and RIP Final Cut Pro, but that's been interesting, right? To see to be around long enough to see fucking technology change.
Totally.
Right? So I guess that just means we're old. I'm old.
Well, it just means that you have so much experience from all sides of seeing the progression from film to video to now being able to shoot on your phone.
I don't think it's important for people to have worked with film. I think it's romantic, and I'm glad I was able to say it. what it really taught me was how to be very judicious in terms of what I was shooting, right? Because you get these 400-foot loads. We weren't shooting 1,000-foot mags. We were doing 400-foot 35mm loads, which was about 3 minutes and 45 seconds of usable footage.
Okay. So you have to be super efficient.
Yeah, you have to be super efficient. And in fact, you can edit. Do you put the whole thing up, or do we edit this thing?
We're going to cut this, yeah.
All right, so...
the magic of editing.
I'm just walking over here.
He's gone.
To this other
and now...
place. These tapes that I would get from the camera system right from the beginning, and they would write down 400, 400, 400, 350, 250, their short ends. And it was every piece of film stock that I would have for the day. And as I was going through the day, I would cross it off as I was shooting, so I knew exactly how much film I had to shoot. Because, unlike digital, where you can shoot forever, and it's just cards or drives. Once you run out of film, you run out of film. So I really learned how to be efficient. So that's kind of cool. I don't know if you get that now with
when
digital
you can
cameras.
Just keep on filming and keep on filming.
And not cutting.
It doesn't cost you anything nowadays.
Well, it costs you time to transcode everything, and you do get yelled at. Like you do, especially on television where there's a workflow and, they want you to cut the camera and have discrete cuts so that the editors don't have to sift through, 20 minutes of me talking to an actor, which I totally get and I agree with. But there are times where there's, 15 minutes left and I got to cover an entire scene and I'm going to let the camera roll for 12 minutes and just get the scene and not cut. Because every time you cut, you lose, 5 minutes to touch-ups and finals and everything.
But seeing as you have edited a lot in your history, do you take that 12-minute chunk and you're probably really good about conveying to the editor what you need from that, or do you work that closely with the editor?
Oh, absolutely. Well, on television, the editors usually have been with the show since the beginning, and they're all really good. So that when I get the editor's cut, it's pretty close to what the episode's going to be. I might swap out performance takes just because of preferences or things that I remember I shot specifically for, order and stuff. But with features, I just worked with Anna Catley, who's phenomenal. She was the protege of Kat Weber, who is phenomenal. And Kat Weber cut my last MOW for CBC, the Hatching, Matching, Dispatching Christmas movie, Christmas Fury, that Mary Walsh wrote and produced, and Mary loved Kat, and I knew Kat was going to be a superstar when she got ordained by Mary Walsh and Mary Sexton and Paul Pope, and editing with Kat was really fun. And Anna was her assistant, and she was crackerjack. She was putting together some of the assemblies and looking through footage and everything, so that when Things I Do for Money came up, which was a passion project, micro budget passion project, I humbly asked her if she would do this, and be careful what you say yes to, because it's gonna take forever and it's gonna be a lot of work, and she just blew it out of the water. But for features, I really like working pretty directly and sort of one-on-one with the editor. Usually let them get their assembly together, and then start digging in. Because there's definitely things that, it's funny, if you've never cut for me before, you'll look at the footage and go, what the fuck am I looking at? And then once I start telling the person, how I shot it and the way I wanted it put together, it makes a lot more sense. And the wonderful thing about working with Anna was because she already assisted on a movie that I did before, she kind of knew how I attack a scene and
knew your style a little bit.
And all the little puzzle pieces, and like there'll be an arbitrary shot that will be out of context, and that shot will be needed for this other scene, and just put that into a separate bin, and I'll pull it out. And so that sort of stuff I think comes with working with the person and the experience of just looking at the footage over and over and over, and the cut over and over and over. And you can do that with features. With television, you get a day for half hour, and sometimes hopefully 2 days for 1 hour, and you try to get as much of your intent across as possible.
That's one day for editing, that half hour. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a tight.
Yeah. Well, they
timeline.
have they have deadlines,
For
right?
sure.
But I mean, the great thing about television, like I said, is their editors are usually really good, and they usually really know the show. And I just did an episode of Murdoch Mysteries, and I get the editors assembly. I'm like, this is pretty close.
Right.
Like this, like it's pretty much the show. There's a couple things I want to explore.
Sure.
There's a couple pitches I want to kind of put out there, but when you're working on a show like that knows what it is and has a history and has all these amazing talented people working on it, you try to go in and not break anything. You try to do your thing and put your
little stamp
your
on
little WPS in it, but otherwise it's I've been very blessed with working with good people.
And you now try to parlay that or pass that knowledge on to other people. You do a lot of teaching. You do some master classes. You work with the DGC. You're a real go-getter in your career, and now you're a real supporter of people who are trying to make their own careers. Pick up their own careers.
It's like film is, and I say this a lot to other filmmakers and then film students. It's like it's an apprenticeship art. It's there are some great film schools, there's some not so great film schools, but film is such a thing that sure, go to school, but you're never going to get asked to show a degree to get a job. Like I've never been asked, do you have your Ryerson certificate? And I'm like, no, I don't. So it really is. I've always sort of boiled it down to a conversation. Filmmakers are constantly having a conversation, whether it's with an audience or with other filmmakers or with actors or with crew. And that dialogue that you have affects the outcome of what you're trying to do. And the more you can have this conversation with other people that have done it before, because I've had some great mentors and I've had some great sort of cinematic supporters. Tim Southam, our guild president at the DGC, I've learned so much from him, being his sort of, I'm the NDD chair, which he was before he ascended to the presidency, but being the chair of the National Directors Division, I get to see Tim in action as our president and learn from him, not only politically and what he advocates for, but also, see what he's like as a director.
Right.
And Kari Skoglund has been phenomenal to me. I don't know why she picked me out of the blue to kind of help and give advice to and take a look at projects that I've been putting together. But every once in a while you need that sort of veteran presence or voice to kind of come in and go, Kari's a great example. I was at one DGC party. It was like one of the first or second things I've been to, and she comes up to me, and I guess she had heard of who I was and that they were making a run at me to start running for election for director rep and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, you can do better. I'm like, hey, Kari, how you doing? Good to see you. And she's like, all this fart and pee joke stuff, it's great. You can do it in your sleep, but what do you really want to do? And I'm like, well, actually, I think I'm actually good at drama, and no one's really given me the chance to do it, because I started in comedy. I started in music videos and country comedy videos, and I kind of, that's where I've sort of found a home. And she just said, come up with an idea for a dramatic TV show and pitch it to me. And I did, and then she optioned the pitch.
Wow.
And from that, it was sort of a longer arc, but Things I Do for Money, the new crime movie, kind of came out of the exploration of the stuff that we were working on with this 1 hour drama pitch. and Hamilton for Hamilton, the crime scene in a city that's trying to figure out who it is, the cultural sort of a diversity of characters, and it's funny. There's been this call for representation in film, and as a filmmaker myself, a POC filmmaker, and someone that is trying to figure out my relationship with the Japanese community and my own family and who I am, it was really interesting to just say, I'm going to make a movie about a Japanese Canadian family that lives in Hamilton, Ontario. Right. And let's see what happens now.
Basically your lifestyle.
Basically. And then, but then, you write this thing and go, oh my God, how am I going to cast it?
Yeah.
Because how many, if this was non-union, right? So micro budget. So how many non-union Japanese male actors in their, 40s are there? Right. There were none. Okay. There was none. So when it came to actually going out and making it, by the grace of Rhett Morita, who's an amazing cinematographer, he messaged me on Facebook and brother, you're not going to find anybody. If they're good, they're actor, they're working, they're actors, and if they're not looking at Facebook posts to get into movies. Right. You're not going to find this guy. So if you want, I will audition for you. And it was such a courageous move because he's a cinematographer. He's
usually comfortable right behind the
camera. And to his credit, he came out and blew me away. And then for the other role, we cast the two boys' dad, not as their dad in the movie, but as their uncle.
Okay.
As the badass
creative casting.
Yeah, the badass hitman. But those are the types of things that you want to be a part of this movement for inclusion and representation, but when it comes time to actually do it, we need more numbers. We need people. We need to start making these stories and telling these narratives so that there's an interest from a younger age to get involved, whether it's in front of the camera or behind the camera, and behind the camera too. It's I was trying to find some Japanese people to work on the film, and Michael Hitoshi Mado came out, which was great. And I had a great group of Japanese translators because there was one scene in Japanese, and none of us know Japanese. More Japanese. But you can tell me when you see the movie if the Japanese holds up. But you try to have inclusion both in front of the camera and behind the camera. And having now done this for 16 years, you see the needle moving, but we still need reinforcements.
Well, and you seem to have been able to cast your movie because of the connections you've made throughout your career. And several things you've talked about, being mentored by Kari and other people. It really is an industry about connections.
Sure.
You can try to do things on your own. You can try to do things on the strength of your degree from the Film Center or from Ryerson or wherever, but you really need to build that community. Yeah,
and you need to show up.
What does that mean to you?
Well, it's what the First Weekend Club does. It's you guys show up the first weekend. You're there, boots on the ground. I try. It's been harder the past several years to get out to all my friends' premieres because I'm either working or I'm not in town or whatever. But I try to go see as many Canadian films in the theaters as I can.
And you're one of the rare exceptions to that rule because most people, I think, have good intentions, but it really is hard to get those audiences out.
It is hard. You do see Ryan Cowdery, Coldry. He comes out to everything, and I love him because he's one of those guys that just shows up.
Yeah.
And he makes films, and he's putting a really good run together. But he's a shining example, and so there are people out there that are getting out and supporting and cheering us on.
Now that's from the film side, from the filmmaker community.
Yep.
What about from the audiences? Why do you think there's such a difficulty in getting Canadians to watch Canadian
Because when I release things I do for money, I'm paying for every single marketing and ad dollar that goes in, which is next to nothing.
Yeah.
And when they release an Avengers movie or a Frozen movie, they have $100 million to play with.
Right.
and that's simply it.
Yeah.
So we need to be more creative, and I think what has been happening, or what has happened in the past, is the the want and rush to get as much as the market as possible. Telefilm Success Index, and kind of trying to gauge the market of how big of a market the Canadian films get.
Right.
I think it was 2%, 3%, 5%.
It
fluctuates in the single digits. English language, and with things I do, I don't want the whole market. I want a specific group from the market. I want people that love crime movies.
Right.
I want the Asian community to get behind the movie, because finally there's a movie
that shows them on screen.
Especially for the Japanese community. I was just talking to the Japanese Cultural Center and the Nikkei Voice, and I was like, I can't think of another movie about Japanese Canadians made by a Japanese Canadian that's not specifically about Japanese Canadians. Usually it's about the internment, right? Because that was the seminal sort of moment.
So their culture isn't part of the reason why the film was made.
Well, this should be a crime movie,
regardless
with anybody's in it, but it's because of the specificity of it. I would love that group, that audience, to show up and see it. For them to see, a fun little caper movie with a bunch of crazy people running around, and then music, people that love music. The cello music that the Max and Theo Aoki.
Yeah, and can I just mention that they are actual professional musicians.
Well, they're not professional because we didn't pay them, but they are world class. Yeah,
they're world class.
World class. They probably could have gone on, but now they're taking these kids. They're taking engineering at McMaster. Like, these guys are smart, and they're nice, and they're humble.
They're really nice,
and they're they work so hard at this, and they've never acted before in their lives.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to be blown away by it. But yeah, they wrote all the original music in it and performed it, not just on cello, but all the score. So, for we're talking about audiences, I don't want to get every single Canadian coming out seeing that. I would love it, but that's not the purpose of doing a theatrical or a specific release for it. It's to preach to the choir that I already have. And if I just get those people to see it, and then be ambassadors for it, and be influencers for it, to shout, hey, you should see this movie, then we'll start seeing
that's the trickle-down effect.
Because otherwise, I don't have $100 million to market the movie. And that's what you need. You need billboards, you need ads. People say that television's dead. Television ads still work. Radio ads still work. Print ads still work. And those are incredibly expensive to the independent filmmaker.
And you talked about these kids being humble and hardworking, which basically sums you up in a nutshell. How important do you think that is to creating a successful career in the film industry? As a teacher, you probably have talked to a lot of students, and do you find that that's an ethos that they still identify with?
I hope so. I mean, listen, you don't have to be humble to make it in the film industry. I mean, look at some of the personalities out there. I mean, the hard work, I think, is the constant, and it's the only thing you can control. When I do these master classes and I talk to students, I'm like, listen, you can't control how much talent you have or how many connections. And you were talking about connections earlier, about how this is a industry of how you connect with people in relationships. But I'm a prime example of someone that had absolutely no connection to the film industry. My dad he worked for the city of Hamilton. My mom was a receptionist at a doctor's office. I came to Toronto with very little sort of integration, and then started making those relationships. But the work that you do, what was I saying? Yes, you can't control how talented you are, how connected you are, how wealthy your family is, how good looking you are. You can't control those things. The one thing you can control is how hard you work. And when I do these classes and I talk to these students, I stand up there. I'm like, there's someone in this room far more talented than me that has a better idea of what a movie is and can tell a story more eloquently, but I can work circles around you. And when you're sleeping tonight, I'm working on a script, or I'm finishing post on my film, or, and as you get older, you try to figure out what that work-life balance is, because it can't always be as exhausting as it is when you're in your 30s. So.
Or 20s.
Yes.
Or younger, with the way they're coming up now.
Yeah.
What advice do you give to your students?
Well, it's not like I have students, but it's funny. Through Facebook, you must get this a lot too, where people are like, "Hey, I would love to have a coffee and talk about the film industry." So I do love meeting up with people. I try to now do it where I'll get 3 or 4 of them all together, because it's all the same. It's like like if we're talking about having a lasting conversation with each other about film in Canada, it's circular. It's the same conversation, and when you're young, it's all about, how do I get an agent? How do I make a movie? How do I get telefilm funding? And it's like, you get an agent when you do something. You make a movie when you decide to make one, and telefilm will notice you when you make a movie and you've done something.
Right.
So the stuff I find particularly useful to say would be stuff that I would have liked to have heard starting out, which is, this is part of the masterclass. It's the first thing I lead with is, there's only 2 reasons I get hired as a director, and there's no other reason. There's only 2. It's execution and point of view. And in the short run, execution's important. Can I get my day on time?
Yeah.
Can I realize the vision within the script? Do crews and cast like me? Am I a good force on set and a positive reinforcer of what's happening? That stuff is, if you just come with a good attitude and you're prepared, that stuff's easy. Mm-hmm. Point of view is the thing that gives you the career that you've always wanted. And it's the hardest thing to really, for me at least. There's some filmmakers that have come out of the gate with phenomenal points of view. Just very specific ways of seeing the world that I think are unique and interesting. And they're all-stars. For me, it's something I'm working at. But if as a young filmmaker, if you can really cultivate and reinforce your point of view and the way you see the world and the lens at which you see the world, that's what's going to make you interesting. Because anybody can pick up a camera at this point. Like you said, you can pick up your phone and make a movie.
So when you say that, your point of view, do you mean having a specific style to your movies, or what exactly do you mean by that? Do you mean like everybody knows what a Tarantino film is because he has a certain...
It's the way that the lens at which you put up to the world and the way you see the world. It's not style.
Okay.
Because, I look at some films which I think are fantastic, but you can't isolate style. Big Night is one of my favorite films ever, but it's not and there's a certain style to it, but it's not as stylized as, like you were saying, a Tarantino film. Point of view is the way you see the world, and what makes you the filmmaker to tell the story, and that's what you're constantly, at least as a filmmaker, trying to either go after funding dollars or studio dollars or network episodic television slots. It's like, why should they hire you, or why should they give you the budget to make that movie? And what it comes down to a lot of times is, well, what makes you an interesting filmmaker? And it's a lot of it is the films that you've already made, and if you haven't made it, it's how do you see the world? And a great example from the last batch of films that have come out is something like Werewolf. Ashley Mackenzie? Yes.
Won the Toronto Film Critics Award, I believe, that year.
Just a stunning piece of work. very specific point of view. Corey Bull's Black Cop, I think, was just a brilliant satire, and a very strong point of view for a film that could have been very just by the numbers genre.
Yeah.
But he was able to dig much deeper.
Actually, Daniel Rohr is a great
Yep.
example of that. He opened TIFF this year with Once We're Brothers, and he's a very, very young filmmaker.
But a ball of energy.
Ball of energy.
We had him at the DGC dinner, and he was just affable and humble.
Very totally.
Like you wouldn't know he had the opening gala slot at TIFF that year, but he did.
And he's very well rounded. He's well read. And I think maybe that's what contributes in part to his perspective, his what makes him unique, because he knows a lot about what's going on. He has a very wide scope of interest in the world.
Yeah.
So is that part of what gives you your perspective?
Absolutely. And then if you want to talk about sort of someone that I think has an indelible mark in the indie scene is Ingrid Beninger, in terms of her point of view, because her movies always come at you from a very personal take on things, but it's universal enough that you go, oh yeah, I you
can relate.
I was never a 14-year-old girl, but I felt that at that moment. And she has a really good way of her cadence of her films are so unique, and I attribute that to her perspective on the way she sees things. So that's when I say point of view, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. And how would you encourage young filmmakers who haven't made their first movie to create that sense of perspective? Just
be truthful. Figure out what you want to say and how you want to say it. Every time you go out there and ask an audience to put in time, whether it's a short film like 10 minutes or a longer film, a narrative at 100 minutes, you're asking a lot. So you have to earn every minute that you're taking away from them. So make it count. There's a lot of content out there. So what makes your story your story? What makes it unique? And fight for that. Because I look at the course of what I've done, and it's funny. Things I Do for Money is one of the most personal films I've done in a long, long time.
Which you wrote as well.
Which I co-wrote with my buddy Gary Nolan. But it's taken me 10 movies to get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm proud of every time I go out and I lead a crew and a cast through fire and water to finish a film. But at least for the film side of things, for features, now I'm all about point of view. I'm all about what do I want to say, what's the perspective I have, and doesn't mean I don't want to make fun films. I mean, things I do is it's funny. It's not an art house festival film. I'm so happy Whistler is premiering it because I do think a festival audience is really going to enjoy it. But it's not crime enough to be a crime film. It's not genre enough to be a genre film. It's not funny enough to be a comedy. But it's exactly the movie I wanted to make.
Your own personal hybrid.
I guess so. I guess I made it for me and my brothers to watch. So hopefully, if the three of us like it, then hopefully there'll be a couple more people.
I have no doubt about that. Your films are always entertaining. You can always count on that, definitely, from a WPS production.
There you go.
Now looking back at your career, now that it's been however many years it's been, what are
How long is this segment? Oh my gosh, this is going to go on forever, isn't it?
No, we're going to cut some of it out.
It's like when you were 5 years old. You're going to do a Brian
No, this is
Lanahan.
my last question.
In grade 6, when you walked into Mr. Allen's class.
I wish I had. I was digging and digging for some of that stuff. Couldn't find any real dirt to kind of bring up, or gems. But when you look back, what are the things you wish you knew then, or the things you would tell yourself not to do?
Right.
Because a lot of the people watching this are filmmakers trying to get their careers off the ground, trying to figure out the best way to make that first film or that second film and really get it noticed.
When you first start out, you don't know what to care about, so you start caring about the weirdest things. Like I get so many questions about copyright and like how do I copyright my film and how do I
Keep
protect
other
it?
people
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm like,
hear
well, I guess you can register it with the WGC or the
Right.
WGA. I guess you can mail it to yourself. But listen, if someone's going to take your script, photocopy it, put their names on it, cast it, finance it, develop it, location scout it, shoot it, post it, release it before you do, then you don't really deserve to make that movie anyway.
Right.
And I'm trying not to be facetious, but like you care about very weird things when you first start out. Because I remember I was really on about that too.
I do hear that a lot from
Yeah.
people starting out. How do I protect my property?
Yeah, it's like work with good people. Like trust your instincts. I guess that's what I would tell myself more is like there's a couple times where your spidey sense goes up and it's like, oh, this doesn't sound right. This sounds a little too good to be true. And usually those things are. Just surround yourself with good people, work with good people, and get rid of the not good people in your life because it's too short. And that goes with both with your team and your friends and the people that are around you. It's like just gravitate towards people that you share the same values and the sort of right attitude and convictions and passion about what we do. You could basically look at any First Weekend Club post to see who the good filmmakers are out there because they're fighting a good fight. They're getting the movies out.
We are. We're all doing our part.
And the other thing is I would say to my younger self, it's like, don't worry about making the money because money comes and money goes. But when you have the money, just save it and put it away and because there's always going to be that time where you're going to want to dedicate yourself to something and to be able to take the time off and not have to work all the time is something that in my 20s I wish I had a little bit more time for development it's be careful what you wish for, right? Because I'm kind of known for working and doing a lot of stuff and I'm very grateful for it, but there's times, and this is a time right now where I've taken a little bit more time to cultivate ideas and to develop stuff rather than just say yes to the very first thing that comes my way. And the power to say no is something that you're very scared of because you're like, well, maybe I'll never work again.
Right.
Which is a real fear for all of us that are independent contractors. Really, that's what we do. We're out there trying to work for a living and create work and keep our friends working. But sometimes the power to say no is important when the project isn't quite right or whatnot. So saying yes to the right things, I think, is something I would say to my younger self.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your experience and your wisdom.
Thanks for coming by.
It's a pleasure to be
There's some
here.
croissants over there if anybody wants some. And I'll see you at the movies.
See you at the movies.
And I'll see you in Whistler. And cut.
And cut.